All right. Well, welcome. This is Tuesday's workshop on Building Bounce. A couple of questions came up since yesterday. Somebody asked, well, when is your book, Building Bounce, going to be done? And that is a good question. I'm supposed to have the writing done by the end of August so that it can be in print and ready for distribution in October. So that's the goal right now on the book, Building Bounce. For right now, the two books that have most of the information that I'm presenting would be our book on marriage, 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriages, has a lot of this information in it. The illustrations and exercises are just for a marriage setting. And then Rare Leadership, again, has a lot of this information in it, but again, the illustrations and exercises are designed for leaders. But the brain science is there, some of the basic principles are there. We're talking today more about building bounce, and I thought I'd start with just a little bit of, we talked yesterday about the brain science, the right side and the left side, and gave the definition of joy, that joy is relational happiness because your brain always experiences joy on the right side. Now, we also alluded to the idea that you have an on-off switch in your brain, and that on-off switch largely controls whether or not the right side of your brain is functioning. And if the right side of your brain stops functioning, basically your relational self shuts down. And you find yourself in problem-solving mode, dealing with people and relations without the right side of your brain engaged. And so this is why just talking about things isn't always a good idea. Because have you ever had a conversation with somebody that was just where the other person wasn't engaged, they weren't looking you in the eye, they weren't expressing any curiosity, all they were doing was listening to your problems, trying to fix the problem, shut down the conversation as quickly as they could, right? They're talking, but it's not really doing any good. So what we're looking at is for talking to be beneficial, you actually have to have this switch in your brain on, because that's what turns on the relational circuits in your brain so that you stay relationally engaged and active with people. I know in my marriage, it's not uncommon for Brenda to say, would you please look at me in the eyes? And that's a sign to me that I'm off somewhere and I'm just in my problem-solving mode. I'm not really being relationally engaged at the time. And so we have a few codes that we use in our marriage to try to help bring that to the surface. One is, let's keep the relationship bigger than the problem. We say that a lot, like, let's keep the relationship bigger than the problem, and that means we may not be able to solve the problem today, but can we at least be happy to be together while we work on solving this problem, over time. And I found that very helpful. It's a good one to remember with your kids, too, because what I find is that when my relational circuits go off as a parent, guess what I lead with when I talk to my kids? The problems, right? So I walk in, so it's the difference, like if I walk into the room and I see that it's a mess and my switch goes off, and then I'm going to say, what is up with this mess? Why do you always do this? When are you ever going to stop, being this way? What is problem? And you go straight into problem-solving mode. You're not being relational, and you're just like, fix this problem, and you leave. Right? And does the kid leave going, wow, I really need to do a better job of cleaning my room? No, they leave going, wow, does my parent have a problem? Right? What is wrong with that person? And so we end up kind of actually pulling the carpet out from under what we're actually trying to do with our kids, when you can still correct those things, but you do it relationship first. And then you take the time to synchronize with that person. You enter into their world and get a sense of what is going on in their world, where are they at, validate that world, and then you can address the problems. But too often in our relationships, we are either disengaged or we just start right in with problems. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more today, but I also want to circle back and finish what we didn't get to yesterday, and that is the use of appreciation for building the joy center in our brain. So we said on the right side of our brain, there is a joy center. And then when we experience upsetting emotions, what happens is instead of the brain activity being up at the front and on the right, it all goes to the back of our brain. So sometimes when I'm feeling really depressed, I'm stuck in the back of my brain. I don't know how to get back, get the activity back to the front. So I'm stuck back here. Or when I'm angry, my activity goes to the back of the brain, because what's happening is in the back of the brain is where I go when my relational circuits turn off. And so we're going to try to figure out, first of all, how do we grow the biggest joy center we can? And then we're going to work on later this week, how do we build pathways back to joy? What are some of the things we can do to make those pathways as well-worn as possible? So we're going to start with appreciation for building the joy center of our brains. And one of the things, the Bible has a lot to say about appreciation, doesn't it? In everything give thanks, in everything give thanks. Well, think about it this way. There's a difference between left brain gratitude and right brain gratitude. Right? Left brain gratitude is a task. So like my mom, did a good job. She taught me to say please and thank you. And so, when somebody hands me something, I say thank you. But at that point, it's just a task. I'm just checking off the box. I said thank you. Task is complete. I'm not necessarily feeling appreciation or feeling gratitude. I'm just collecting a task. So left brain gratitude is when you're just checking the box and saying thank you. And there's a lot of us who think that we're very grateful people because we're good at that. But we aren't very good at the right brain gratitude, because what the right brain gratitude is doing is actually entering into the feelings of appreciation. Like, oh, it was so kind of you to take the time, to do this for me. I really appreciate that. It just makes my shoulders relax. It makes me, you don't have to say all of it every time, but we don't take the time to really feel appreciation very often. And the people who do that naturally and regularly grow their joy center bigger. The people who are just left brain checking off the task, that doesn't do anything to grow the joy center on the right side of your brain. So I talked to Jim Wilder about this at one time. He's the brain science expert I rely on for this information. And he told me that when he was a psychologist running a clinic, that it was a pretty regular exercise that he would give to people, that they needed to practice 5 minutes of consecutive appreciation twice a day for 60 days. Right? 5 minutes of consecutive appreciation twice a day for 60 days. Now, some people do this naturally all the time, right? And that is that their mind naturally goes to things that they enjoy, that they appreciate, and they dwell on those things for 5 minutes at a time. That's not a big deal. And then there's some of us left-brainers. And we are always solving problems, and we are always in task mode, and we are always getting things done. And the idea of taking 5 minutes to stop and smell the roses feels wasteful. Right? And it can be hard if you've got a really well-developed left brain and you're not very good at this right brain stuff to actually take 5 minutes in a row on appreciation, especially if you're already agitated. So I remember the first time I tried this, I thought, okay, I'm going to appreciate my morning coffee. And I'm going to pour the coffee in, it smells good, and it's in a cool ceramic mug. And I literally got about 2 seconds into this exercise. And I went, oh, this smells good, the ceramic's cold, and this is the stupidest thing I've ever done, right? That was kind of how that went. Because I got what I call a left brain attack, right? The left brain came in and said, what do you think, this is not going to solve your problems. And I'm like, you're right, this isn't going to solve my problems. What am I, who cares? Drink the coffee and let's go get the problem solved. And, but it helps me to think in terms of I'm not asking this 5 minutes a day to solve all of my problems. What am I asking this 5 minutes a day to do? To grow my capacity to do the problem solving. In other words, I've got to have a rhythm in my life. I've got to have capacity. I can't just constantly be in problem-solving mode. That's how we burn out. So I've got to have some time along the way, and we just call it stopping and smelling the roses thing. And that is where you take 5 minutes at a time. And for those people who have a really hard time doing it, this is what I recommend, and that is write out your appreciation. Make yourself take 5 minutes, set an alarm, and write it out for 5 minutes. And then when you're done, find somebody to read it to at some point during the day. Because what I find is when I write, I'm mostly in my left brain. But then when I read it to somebody else, the connection that takes place as I read it to them brings my right brain online. I can tell you there have been times when I have journaled about things going on in my life with no emotion at all, and then read it to somebody and cried as I was reading it to them. What's the difference? Right? The one's being done in the left brain problem-solving mode, analyzing what's going on in my life. The other one is being done out of the relational side of my brain, connecting with people. And I'm going, oh, and it brings out a completely different side to this. So if you do journal your appreciation, what I would encourage you to do to add on to that is read that to somebody at some point during the day. And if you can do that twice a day for 60 days, if you could take a brain scan, you would notice that this part of your brain literally grows because you're giving it a joy workout. So the Indiana University did a study on this, and they took, I think it was 48, something like that, people who were in therapy for depression and anxiety, and they split them into two control groups. So maybe it was 42, because there were 21 of them in this group, and they just continued on with their therapy as usual. And then this 21 continued on with their therapy, but they added one thing. What Indiana University people had them do was to take a half an hour to to write a letter. It wasn't journaling. They wrote a letter of thanks to somebody for 30 minutes. And that it was up to them whether they sent it or not. But just the action of writing a thank you letter for 30 minutes, once every day for 30 days, they then measured where they were at with their anxiety and depression, and can you guess what happened? Right? The group that was writing the thank you letters and getting their mind to dwell on appreciation for 30 minutes a day was measurably improved over the ones that were just going to therapy. And I think that that's part of what we're talking about, is that one of the reasons God talks about praise and appreciation and gratitude is the benefit that it gives us for quieting our nervous system, for helping us calm down, and for helping us understand that no matter what's going on in life, I can always find some joy. And if I can always find some joy, no matter what's going on in life, it's kind of like I know I'm going to be okay. And so this is part of what we're doing. So what I've got an acrostic here on the word games to think through 5 different ways that you can practice appreciation. Because when I first started this, I was like, I'm not very good at this appreciation thing. I don't know how to fill up my 5 minutes. How do I do this? So here it is. Number 1 is gratitude. And by gratitude, we're talking about the right brain gratitude. And I use this to talk about what is going on in the present. Now, this should be in your handouts there. You got the word gratitude. That means what is happening in the present that you have to appreciate. So, for example, you might say, hey, I appreciate just the fact that I'm in this classic old, barn tabernacle, and while it's a little more humid than I like, I appreciate, that you find something like just the history that's represented here, and you give yourself a chance to dwell on the appreciation of the historic feeling of being here. In other words, you could just sit here and go, man, I hate these hardwood seats. I hate this cement floor. I hate how humid it is. I hate what's on here. I wish, this and I wish that. And you can be in here and have an absolutely miserable time, or you can train your brain to think, what is in here to appreciate? And your brain looks for what is going on here currently that I can appreciate, and dwell on that, and by thinking about those things for as long as you can. So that's gratitude. What is going on in the present for which to be grateful? And can you camp out there for a little bit? A is anticipation. Anticipation is, what do I have to look forward to in the future? It's very important to have things that you're looking forward to. So before Brown City Camp, I was looking forward to Brown City Camp, right? There was this anticipation. And when I could share that with my wife, Brenda, we could have a conversation about it. We could share our anticipation of the joy that was coming. And here's the thing about joy. When you share it with somebody else, it increases. That is, if I'm having joy, and then you and I start talking about the joy together, and you share the joy with me, our joy increases. If a third person comes into the conversation and they enter in and share the joy too, the joy just increases. This is the beautiful thing about joy. As long as it's being shared, it can't be decreased by more people getting involved. So if we get the whole tabernacle feeling joy all at the same time, it's not sucking the joy out of you in order for the whole tabernacle to be feeling joy, right? It just amplifies and increases. And so anticipation is a nice way to share joy. I heard somebody put it this way: this is why husbands should never surprise their wives with European vacations. I know some of you are thinking about it, so I'll just remember Right? You don't surprise your wife with a European vacation. Why? Because half the fun of that is the anticipation of what's coming and all the conversations that you have together and the joy that there is in just thinking about, oh, hey, when we do this, I want to do that. And when we go here, I want to do this. And anticipation is a great sense of joy. And when we're doing projects, a lot of times we're doing the projects anticipating how much joy I'm going to bring the person when they realize what I've done for them. And so as I'm training my mind to think about how I can spread joy to people, my mind learns to camp out over in the appreciation side of things. The joy center in my brain grows. On the other hand, if I do projects and I'm going, they aren't going to notice, nobody's going to care, I don't know why I'm wasting my time, they're probably just going to get upset with me for not doing this right, then the whole time I'm doing the project, what am I reinforcing? Fear. Right? So I can be doing a project and growing a fear bond with the person, or I can be doing a project and growing a joy bond with somebody, depending on what I am anticipating. And so training my brain to learn to look for good things to anticipate. It can be a good idea even to keep a little list. What am I looking forward to today? What am I looking forward to later this week? What am I looking forward to next month? What am I looking forward to later in the year? And so by having like 4 of these things out there, and again, I'm not talking about life-changing things, just something that makes you smile, right? Like later today, I'm looking forward to getting a cappuccino from the coffee shop, right? That's something I'm looking forward to. Or later today, I'm looking forward to getting ice cream. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It's just something. And so the more that we train ourselves to be looking forward to this, so that later in the week I'm thinking to myself, I'd like to get over to the Lake Huron and see the big water. That's something to anticipate and look forward to. Right? So you just, anticipation is another way to grow joy. Third one is memories, and this one's huge. And let's look at it this way. A lot of us, if we struggle with fear, depression, anger, guess what kind of memories we tend to rehearse? We tend to, remember and think about the memories that make us afraid or that make us angry or that make us depressed. And there's some of us, when I bring up memories, they're going, well, I have no joyful memories. All of my memories are sad or all of my memories are bad. And I'm like, there may be elements of those memories that are bad or sad or whatever, but there are elements of the memories that are joyful. And if we can learn to separate some of those out and find what are the things in your past that have ever made you smile, and training your brain to think about the things that have made you smile is remembering in a sense, what you're doing is you're remembering how God has been good to you. And if there are no joyful memories in the past, then it's almost like saying God has never really been good to me. There's never been, never any cause for smiling any one time in my life. Now, I may feel that way at times, especially if I'm deep in depression at the moment or if I'm deep in anxiety right now. I may not be able to get there, and I understand that. This is why we have to do these things as exercises regularly, not necessarily as fixes for when I'm in the deepest part of my problem. So let me give you some categories to think about for memories. One category of memories could be vacation memories. What are your favorite vacation memories? So one of the things I've seen my wife do is she keeps photos on her phone, and she'll have categories for them. So she even got a category here, like nature. What are some nature experiences that you've had that have made you smile? I can even get more specific than that. You can break them down into joyful memories related to water, joyful memories related to snow, right? Now, we can all think of bad memories related to some of these things, but there are joyful memories too, right? So what's my favorite sunset? Or what sunset could I go to right now and I can remember where I was, I can remember that, what was going on, I can remember how I feel, and I can go relive that. Having some of these, another way to think about this is, or another category could be times I felt close to God. Are there memories where you say, you know what, I remember feeling so close to God on that day. If I go back, I can remember where I was. Was I out in nature? Was I in my bedroom? Was I in the car? Was I at the church? Where was I when I had that experience? And you get very specific. And so as you're remembering, as you're trying to spend 5 minutes on a memory like this, you say things like, man, I was in my bedroom. I said I had just finished reading this passage in Psalms, and I was upset about this, and I was crying out to God, and I felt like He gave me something to hold on to right now. And to this day, I can remember how I felt when God gave me this perspective. I don't know what it is for you, but I mean, there might be something like this. Can you collect? I have a friend who calls these 5-bar memories, and that is, you know how on your cell phone here at camp, you have to pay attention to how many bars you have because you might have to walk to a different part of camp to get more bars. Okay. So, well, in the same way, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-bar memories about how close I felt to God. There are some memories I go back to, and I have no recollection of being connected to God at all. Right? Those are the ones that need healed. But I have some memories where I felt maybe a 3-bar connection with God or a 4-bar connection, or some I was like, man, I was just in the presence of God and I knew it. So write those down. Give them titles. Give them names. Make a list of them. Like this, these are my God memories. Maybe it's a time when God provided for me. Here was a need I had, and here's a time that God provided, and I remember the joy I felt when the provision came through. So as we track these memories, what happens is the more of these memories you begin to collect, the easier it is for you to say, you know what, I should spend 5 minutes in appreciation. Where should I go? Oh man, I've got a list of 25 things already at my fingertips that I can go to at a moment's notice to let myself just hang out in a place of appreciation for a while. All right, so that's memories. E is events, and what I mean by events is maybe inviting somebody to go have ice cream with you. Inviting somebody to come over and have a meal with you. There's routinely been these exercises, studies done of what is the happiest place on earth to live, and it wasn't Disneyland, right? But the happiest place on earth to live routinely has been Switzerland, Denmark, Norway, one of these countries, and people are trying to figure out why. Why are these places so happy? Why do people seem to have such a nice feel about life? And one of the things that they notice is that each of these countries is characterized by a relational rhythm in their culture. And the relational rhythm in their culture is that every Friday night through Sunday night, they know their weekend is going to be filled with these relational experiences. So on Friday afternoon, they are beginning to anticipate the event coming on Friday night when they get together with their friends for dinner. And so they're out there, they're shopping, and they're thinking about their friends while they're shopping and preparing. And they're already, so on Thursday, they're beginning to anticipate with joy what's coming on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then on Monday and Tuesday, they're remembering the joy that they had on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so there's a really nice rhythm to their week. And that rhythm is built around relational connection. What they find is that the cultures that have the most well-developed sense of rhythm, where you're going to have rest and you're going to have relational connection, are the ones where people have the most bounce, if you will. They have the most emotional capacity developed. I think that's why God made this such a big deal out of the Sabbath. It wasn't so that He could say to people, shame on you for not, resting better. He gave us a Sabbath because He wanted to anchor in this relational rhythm and this idea of a resting rhythm to our lives, because He knew that we were going to need a lot of emotional capacity to deal with stuff. So you think about the way that Sabbath worked under the law of Moses, and it started at 6 p.m. on Friday and went till 6 p.m. on Saturday. So if you think about it this way, the last day of Jesus' life began with the Last Supper, right? 6 p.m., they had their Last Supper. 9 p.m., they go to the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives. Midnight is the arrest. By 6 in the morning, He's on trial. By 9 a.m., He's on the cross. By 6 p.m., He's in the grave. It's one day, though. It's a one Hebrew day from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., from having dinner with His disciples to being in the grave, was that 24-hour period. It helps me to think about that is the cycle or the rhythm. So that's why in Genesis 1, have you ever wondered why it says there was evening and there was morning day 1? Instead of there was morning and there was evening day 1? It's because the Hebrew calendar starts in evening. And so your evening prayer, Jim Wilder likes to call it an evening prayer to start your day. Because that is, I'm going to start my day with rest, and then I'm going to wake up and get active with God and join Him wherever He's at work, and then I'm going to go back into a time of rest. And so there's a rhythm that takes place there every day. There's a rhythm that takes place in the Sabbath. And guess what happens? The first thing that would open every Sabbath day in the Jewish culture, when it came 6 p.m. on Friday night, guess what was going to happen? There was going to be a family meal. An extended family was going to come and gather together for an extended family meal on Friday night. So guess what you spent all Friday afternoon doing? Right? Preparing for that meal. So you're anticipating. And guess what? So in that culture, the women are getting ready for the meal. The men are starting to wrap up their work week and get things put away and get things organized. And they're saying, all right, what do I got to do to be ready for work on Sunday morning? Okay, I got to get this ready. So they're wrapping down, winding down. So God built this anticipation into it. He built this relational connection into it. And then you come and it's like, okay, we are together relationally. And then when that's done, lasts maybe 2-3 hours, I've got the rest of the evening to rest. And then I get up in the morning, I go to the synagogue, I come back, I rest. Right? Then at 6 p.m., I start getting ready for my work day the next day. And I'm starting to get organized, starting to get busy, starting to get going again. And there's just a really nice rhythm to life. Do you know how many Sabbath days there were under the law of Moses? 70. Right? The 52 weeks, and then there were special festival and feast days. If you add all the festival and feast days that were Sabbaths, with the weekly Sabbath, there were 70 days out of their 360-day calendar that were devoted to rest, which is exactly 20%. I think, man, how much stress would we save ourselves if we just practiced Sabbath? How much more joy might we have in our lives if we had a relational Sabbath in our routine that we're building in and counting on? So that's what I mean by events. Events are events where I am gathering relationally with other people so that I can share joy with them. All right, and then there's songs. Have you ever noticed there's some songs that just make you smile? If you go to YouTube, it's kind of interesting to see which songs get the most hits because it's not always the most popular song, it's the ones that make people smile the most. And there's some songs that are just silly, stupid, but you watch them and you can't help but smile, and you watch and they got 10 million hits on that song. And so I find it the same way. The Bible says encourage one another with songs, hymns, and spiritual songs. And I think this is part of it. One of the things that singing does is singing, when I'm actually entering into it and not just going through the motions, connects my left brain and my right brain together so they both get active. You can't really engage in singing without engaging your right brain, unless you're just kind of going through the motions. So that's why, remember yesterday we did this Shalom Your Body thing with it, like, and then, when I'm afraid, I'll trust in you, God. Well, there's for people who have trouble trusting God, we have an alternative to that one, and it goes, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. And the reason we do that is that it's hard to sing that and not smile. And it helps to bring some relaxation, appreciation into the process. So games as a way of sharing joy. So what I want to have you do right now is we're going to take 5 minutes to let you just find a memory. All right, we're going to work on a memory. Find a memory or something you're anticipating. Give you the option. And write down about that. Give it a name. Put down a location. Write down something about how it makes you feel. I'm just going to take 3 minutes with it for right now. Then what we're going to do is we're going to split into groups, and I'm going to have you share it with each other. Okay? So we'll take about 3 minutes. Write down appreciation you have either about a memory or something you're anticipating, looking forward to. And then I'll tell you when we'll gather and when I say groups, it's going to be 3 or 4 at the most people. All right? We're not going to do 6, in a group. 3 or 4. Okay? So I'll time it. We'll give you 3 minutes here to think about and practice some appreciation, thinking this through. One more minute. This is my last one, but you can have it if you want it. I don't need it. All right, that was 3 minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and break into groups of like 3 or 4, and let's just go around and you can read or you can just share from your notes what it was that brought you joy. And we're going to take probably not more than 5-6 minutes for this, so take about 1 to 2 minutes to share, and we'll go forward. Yeah, I know, I can imagine. I don't blame you. Don't blame you. All right, 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes. Okay, 1 more minute. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be nice to be with mom and dad. Very good. All right, there we go. That was 5 minutes. So first of all, one of the things I want you to notice, the atmosphere in the tabernacle, could you feel it change a little bit? There's just a little bit more energy, a little bit more life, and you think about how you feel right now compared to how you felt 10 minutes ago. And how many of you say, I feel a little bit better than I did 10 minutes ago? Okay? Yeah. And we're thinking, so part of the idea here is imagine if you knew you could always be able to look forward to that every day you were going to be able to end your day with a group of people and you could go around and tell stories that made you all happy together, what that would do for your day just knowing that you were going to be able to end your day like that. Right? If you knew you could end your day with a husband or a wife that way, if you knew you could end your day with your family that way, I think personally that's one of the reasons I think Duck Dynasty was so popular. is that no matter how crazy things got during the day, they knew at the end of the day, multi-generational family was going to be around the table, happy to be together, sharing stories of the day, laughing, doing things that increase your joy. And when you know you're going to have relational joy time in the evening, it makes it easier to rest after that, doesn't it? And I find that what happens is a lot of us fall asleep problem solving. And if I'm falling asleep problem solving, guess how I'm going to sleep? Terrible, right? I'm not going to sleep well, and I'm going to tend to have cortisol pumping through my brain all night long, which literally is destroying brain cells. So what you kind of want to do, if at all possible, is have a problem-free zone around your bed in your bedroom and say, let's do our problem solving before that. Make your to-do lists. Right? Make your to-do list for the next day. Make your list of what are the problems that are going to need to be addressed tomorrow. Write those things out, get them in writing, and do it before you go to your bedroom. Don't do it while you're in bed thinking and then try to roll over, right, where the last thing you just did was list out all the problems you've got to solve the next day. Okay? So write out your problems to be solved, journal about those problems to be solved, do all of that like in the living room, in the kitchen, somewhere else, and then set that aside and then try to do something relationally connecting, or it could be if you're by yourself and you don't have relational people, maybe there's a song you listen to, maybe there's music you listen to, maybe you do appreciation journaling before you go to bed, but you're not doing problem solving stuff before you go to bed. And that means, and so you've always got this to look forward to. It gives you something to anticipate throughout the day. And then if you can wake up and do the same thing in the morning, imagine how good that is. Like, you're going to start your day with either some relational connection around joy or with some appreciation. And one person put it to me this way in a text this week. He said, just fill up your joy tank every morning and hope it doesn't run out by evening. And then fill it up again before you go to bed, right? Wake up in the morning and fill your joy tank. Hope it doesn't run out until you can refill it again. But this is kind of the cycle that we're trying to build in our lives. And the more successful we are at creating that rhythm around joy and rest, the more emotional capacity that we're going to have, the more ability to bounce back from hard things we're going to have. The less rhythm that we have and the less joy there is in that rhythm, the less emotional capacity we're going to have to bounce back from things. And that's why, like, if you're married and the last thing you do before you go to sleep is fight, you have an issue. So sometimes you aren't going to be able to solve the problems. You say, well, let's keep the relationship bigger than the problem. Let's go ahead and do something fun that we like doing together, and let's try to end our day in a good place, as good a place as we can. And so those are all some ways that we try to increase build our joy bucket. And we do it by joy workouts where, the appreciation, the joy is the exercise, and then there's a rest afterwards that allows it to take root and grow. All right, so that was all yesterday. Now we're going to start today. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about the relationships. We said that to be grounded and secure, that one of the anchors for people with a lot of bounce, who are able to bounce back from emotionally difficult situations, is that they have safe, calm, and secure relationships. Safe, calm, and connected. There are people in their life they can look to and say, I feel safe, calm, and connected with that person. And if you don't have anybody in your life that you can look at and say, I feel safe, calm, and connected with that person, your anxiety level is going to go up, and the amount of capacity that you have to handle stress is going to go down. If you have a whole group of people with whom you feel safe, calm, and connected, your emotional capacity goes up significantly because you're never going to have to go through anything alone. And it's one of the reasons why loneliness is such a huge problem when it comes to building bounce and creating emotional capacity. Because let's go show you this next slide here if we can. It's this slide comes from my co-author on the Building Bounce book, Stephanie Hinman. I don't think they see. But all right, could we go to the next slide? Thank you. Anyway, it's the idea of, you'll see it's got trauma. You got it on your handout there. Trauma all over the place. And then there's like a bubble, and the trauma's on the outside, and there's like this bubble of security around it. And as long as at the core I feel safe, calm, and connected, I'm not going to get traumatized by all of this upset out there. If I don't have a safe, calm, and connected core, then what tends to happen is that part of my right brain called the amygdala gets triggered. And when my amygdala gets triggered, it triggers what's called the fight, flight, or freeze center of your brain. And that means fighting means I get angry. And angry means I want this problem to stop. This is not fair, this is not right, and I'm mad because I just want it to stop. Or I get fear, right, which is the flight or the freeze part. And that is, fear makes me want to run away. Or just so overwhelms me that I freeze and I can't do anything. So in other words, I'm either going to get anger or fear, both of which are very high energy emotions. Have you noticed that anger and fear are like stepping on the emotional gas? They just send, adrenaline through your body and everything's up here. And so what happens is when I have traumatizing kind of things going on in my life, I have overwhelming things going on in my life, if I don't have safe, calm, and connected in the middle of it, and my fight, flight, or freeze center gets triggered, I will stay in a place of trauma. I will stay in a place of being traumatized, and I'm not going to be able to return to joy, and that's when I tend to get stuck. And I get stuck because I can't find safe, calm, and secure. So you think about it, this is what happens with little kids who are learning to find safe, calm, and secure with their parents. Like, you can think about a thunderstorm at night, and they get, I'm going to die, what's going on? And they don't even know how to put it into words, but their fight, flight, or freeze center is all getting agitated and their anger's up there. What's the first thing they do? They go run into mom and dad. Why? Because they want safe, calm, and secure connection. They want a safe, calm connection with somebody. They're not coming to mom and dad so they can give them a scientific explanation of how some thunderstorms work, right? They're coming to mom and dad because they want to feel connected. You know, the way Jim Wilder puts it, they want to feel connected to a bigger brain. Somebody whose brain is not overwhelmed by what is happening right now, who is able to stay calm, who is able to be happy to see them, who says, no problems, we've got this, you're fine because what? You're with me. It's going to be okay. That's what we're looking for. When we get agitated, when we get upset, we are all looking for that. Who is that person out there who is going to be, this is fine, I've got it, you're going to be okay, I'm here now, it's all right. Which is why when you look, whenever God says to people, don't be afraid, what's the next line almost always? For I am with you, right? And what he's getting at here, is that is very reassuring if I have a joy bond with God. If I have a fear bond with God, that's not so reassuring. In the same way, as a child, if I have a joy bond with my parents, it's very reassuring to go be in their presence and know I'm going to be okay because I'm with them now. And so what tends to happen is we're looking at this going, well, how do I find this? So some people are like, well, that's my problem. I'm all alone and there's nobody reaching out to me, providing this for me. And I'm like, that's nice, but that's really not how life works for the most part. For the most part, we don't have people who are noticing and reaching out to us and saying, I will be safe, calm, and secure for you, and I will be the bigger brain for you. What we do is we have to begin building relationships a little bit at a time with people and start creating a network of people by developing our relational skills. For example, one of the things that's beautiful about Brown City Camp is there are a lot of people here who have what you would call neighbor skills. And by neighbor skills, that means they know how to make you feel like you belong and welcome and, hey, good to see you. And a lot of times when we go back to our homes, especially if you live in the suburbs, you drive home to your house, you open the garage door with a button, you go into the garage, you close the garage door, you go into your house, and you can go weeks without ever seeing any neighbors. So if you're going weeks between times that you see neighbors, guess how good your neighbor skills are? Not very good, right? Because you just never practice. Now, we've got some neighbors next to us, and guess what? They spend almost all day outside watering their plants and putting in new things, and they're out on the front porch all day long. Everyone in the neighborhood knows them. And guess what? People will go out of their way to stop by just to have a little chat. Just to have a little chat. Why? Because it's just a little moment of joy in their life. And some of you can remember when neighborhoods were like that all over the place, where that was common, that people would just hang out outside, they'd be on their front porch, they'd have a short, conversation, and you had lots of friends. You felt like you knew people all over the neighborhood. Well, today we live in this very isolated culture where I don't feel like I know anybody. And I can even be around people, and I feel the most alone when I'm around people because I don't know how to make a connection with anybody. So we're looking at, sometimes we have to make a plan here of how am I going to make a plan to engage relationally with people. Now, some of you are already really great at this, and this is kind of a waste of time for you, but it's helpful if you're trying to explain it to somebody else, right? Here's how you make friends, right? How do you make a friend? Well, I would say, first of all, I heard one of my coworkers has put it this way. He said that if you want to make friends, here's the key. Be the sort of person who makes problems smaller, not the sort of person who makes problems bigger. If you're the sort of person that when someone sees you walking up, they go, oh, my problems are about to get smaller, you're going to have a lot of friends. And if you're the sort of person who, when they see you walking up, they go, oh man, my problems are about to get bigger, you're going to have a hard time making friends. Now, does this mean you're not allowed to have problems? No, that's not what that means at all. I mean, what it means is that you need to learn how to lead into relationships, not with problems. You need to learn how to lead into conversations. You don't lead into conversations with your problems. You lead into conversations how? With the right side of your brain, relationally engaging with people. So some people lack that skill. They've never learned it. So when you see them walking, you know that the first thing out of their mouth, they're going to start talking to you about their problems, and they're not going to do anything to show any curiosity about you, to have any kind of connection about you. This conversation is going to be all about them, which is fine if you're a counselor and they're paying you $100 to listen. But if you're trying to be a friend and you're actually trying to create a friendship, that's not how you create a friendship, is it? That's not how you create a relationship. And so for some of us, we've got to learn that maybe one of the reasons I'm having trouble connecting with people is that I'm constantly leading with my problems in my conversations instead of leading with some other skills. So let me give you 4 things that you need to lead with in order to build your relational capacity to grow these safe, calm, safe, and connected types of relationships. So the first one is curiosity. Excuse me. If I lead with curiosity, what I'm doing is I'm saying, I'm interested in you, right? I'm interested in you. I'm curious how you feel about this or that. I'm curious what's happening in your life. I'm curious what's going on with you. I can't tell you how many times when I first became a pastor, my wife would correct me about this. She said, Marcus, you always lead in with ministry stuff. Ask them what's going on in their life. I'm like, oh, okay. It's not like, hey, we need a volunteer in the nursery. Would you mind? No, that's not how you start the conversation, is it? It's like, because if you do that all the time with conversations, guess what? People are going to start avoiding you. So, but you're going, hey, what's happening in your world? I'm curious about what's going on in your life. How are you feeling about things? How are this happening? That's the first step to creating relational engagement with somebody else. Might seem simple. Again, if you do this regularly, it's like, what's the big deal? But you'd be surprised how many people have never thought about it before. And so so you can practice. You say, well, I don't have any friends to practice with. So here's how I practice. Every time I go to the store or the bank, or any time I've got a human interaction with somebody, I will practice a little bit of curiosity. And so I'll look at them and I'll look for something to be curious about. So I went to the bank the other day and the teller had an iPhone watch on. So I said, hey, that's kind of curious. I've never had one of those. How does that work? And all of a sudden she's talking for 5 minutes about her iPhone watch. Or, something else like, it's like, I noticed you put a little coloring in your hair there. It's like, I'm curious what the story is behind that. Would you just wake up one day, decide to do that? And it's amazing how many times there is a story behind it they're happy to share with you. They give you some, being a little curious about what's going on. And what happens is if you can kind of plan this out. So if people feel like I'm isolated, I don't have any friends, one of the assignments that sometimes is helpful for people like this is make a list of people that you will see anyway on a daily basis. Whether it's at the grocery store, whether it's at the bank, whether that you're going to see them, even if it's like another person at the school when you drop off your kids. Make a list of everybody that you would see anyway, and then ask yourself the question, how can I initiate something relational with them? Not in the sense of I want them to become my best friend by tomorrow, but in the sense of how can I just show some relational curiosity with them enough that the next time I show up, they may actually have some curiosity. They may have a little bit of, oh, I remember talking to you. I enjoyed that. Maybe we could do it again. And the more of those kind of conversations you have, the more opportunity there is for some of them to stick. And so curiosity is the first key to this. The second one is appreciation. And appreciation, same thing. Again, not just saying thank you, but taking the time to notice what someone has done, to offer them appreciation, makes a person feel noticed, makes them feel seen, makes them feel like there's some value to them. So you say, hey, I really appreciate that you went out of your way to, get me that bottle of water like my daughter did during the break here. She came up, anything you need, Dad? Can I get you anything? I'm like, yeah, some water. She gives me hers, right? Here you go. So I appreciate that. Very thoughtful. And so you look at these things and you're thinking, right, if I want to build relationships, appreciation is the second one. Let me go to the third one, and that's kindness. And kindness is simply, can I do something for you? Is there anything you need, right? What could I do to make your problem smaller? That's the essence of kindness. What could I do to help make your problem smaller? Sometimes it's like, I could really use somebody to just listen. That would be a kind thing to do right now. If someone would just listen. In fact, I heard about some guys who graduated from a psychology program out in California, and they opened a clinic, and the sign on the clinic was, "We promise not to talk." And people lined up around the block to pay them $100 per half hour just to listen with the promise that they wouldn't try to fix them. Some of you got a new entrepreneurial idea right now. Okay. I don't know how that will work here in Brown City, but it worked in California really well. And so kindness basically is about sharing anything I can do for you that's going to help make your problems smaller. So how many of you have heard of the 5 love languages? All right. I would just suggest to you that actually the 5 love languages would probably be more accurately described as the 5 kindness languages. There are 5 ways to be kind to somebody. Because one of the things that Dr. Chapman says in the book is that love is a choice. But we know from brain science that love isn't a choice. Love is a right brain attachment experience that's taking place. Kindness, however, is a choice. I can choose to be kind. And so what we're doing with those 5 love languages is we're choosing to speak that person's language, in a sense, by connecting to them in an area of kindness that they appreciate. So this is the other way that we can be friends. So make a list of people that you see every day. Make a list of people that you're going to see once a week. Make a list of people that you'll see once a month, and see if you can't get 20 to 30 names on a piece of paper that you have relational potential out there because these people exist in your life. And then you say, okay, next time I'm with them, I'm going to try a little curiosity and make it about them. And you never know who's going to stick. All right. So the other thing now you may notice that this spells cake, makes it easy to remember. Curiosity, appreciation, kindness, and the last one is eye contact. So go eye contact. I love this. Jesus looking at the little girl. They're making really good eye contact. I see you. That's full engagement right there, isn't it? So this spells cake, and what it is this is a way to recognize, first of all, if you don't feel any of these things. Like, let's say I walk up to the bank and I'm looking at the teller and I don't feel like being curious, right? I don't feel like making eye contact. I just want to get my money and go. I just want to make the deposit, get out of here. Just want to get this task done. What that means is my relational circuits are off, right? My relational circuits are off. I don't feel like, making eye contact, don't feel like being kind, don't feel like showing appreciation, don't feel like doing any of these things right now. Well, that's fine in some situations, but there's other situations where you're with somebody who's really needs you to connect and really needs you to be engaged. And if your circuits are off, what that means is none of this is going to just automatically flow. Your right brain is shut down. You're now in problem-solving mode. So guess what the problem is you need to solve? Yeah, the problem you need to solve right here essentially is your attitude, right? The problem you need to solve right now is, how do I get my circuits back on? Well, the way that you get your circuits back on is by practicing any of these 4 things. Any of these 4 things will help to get your circuits back on. So if I walk into the bank and I see the teller and I'm not feeling like it, and all of a sudden I realize, wow, I should really get my relational circuits on, I would look away from the teller for a second and go, what could I be curious about? Oh, yeah. And now I make eye contact and I say, so I'm curious how your day has been. Has this been a busy day for you? Has it been a week? And it's amazing how many people are willing to engage. Now, sometimes people won't. And if they won't, it just means their circuits are off. And you can either take a little more extra time to try to help them get their circuits on, or I can just say, well, have a nice day and we'll try with somebody else. So this is all part of this process, that if I need safe, calm, connected relationships in my life. Well, guess which one is the most important for building bounds? That's safe, calm, and connected with God. Right? Safe, calm, and connected with God. And so the problem here is most of us, if we don't have an ongoing relationship with God where we feel safe, calm, and connected with Him, it's hard to suddenly create it in the midst of crisis. In the same way that if you haven't been practicing these emotional bounce skills, it's hard to suddenly come up with them when you're in a crisis. You have to become a lifestyle and part of your practice. And so this is tomorrow what we're going to be focusing on. So when we come back tomorrow, our focus is going to be on how do I build a safe, calm, connected relationship with God. And we're going to teach an Emmanuel journaling process that'll give you an opportunity to practice some listening prayer concepts here in the as we go through it. And we'll also teach you a few other principles that we've learned along the way for how to grow a deeper walk with God, since obviously that's the ministry. How do we have a deeper walk? So we'll focus on that tomorrow. And I believe that's it for today. So thank you guys for coming. Don't forget, there is a bookstore under the white tent out there where a whole bunch of books that I wrote are out there in case you want to purchase any of those. So thanks for coming. We'll see you tomorrow.